This.
I'm a selfish, and I can only think about myself. And why didn't they vote for Kamal in the election?
This.
During the trip, it felt like some people were too busy playing oppression Olympics to fully grasp the experiences of Palestinians living in Palestine.
And this.
Literally could not see past your own fucking issues, your own fucking comfort, or whatever the fuck. I don't care how oppressed you are in this country. I'm sure people are gonna come over and say, yes, me, I'm saying this. I don't care how oppressed you are in this country. Nothing justifies genocide or arguing to not only support an administration that is doing a genocide, but give up a leverage that cost you nothing. It cost you nothing.
Are all the same message. And they have been the same message the entire time. And if you couldn't see how problematic these messages were when they were coming out, you need to reflect on that. And I suggest you reflect offline, because you're probably going to feel defensive, you're probably going to be mad, and because you could not recognize the issues in the first place, you're not going to be able to recognize your own anti-Blackness. So I'm telling you, shut up, reflect offline, have those big ass fucking feelings that are going to come out offline, and then maybe craft an apology for whatever the fuck you said back then when you couldn't recognize it, when you couldn't recognize the fucking problem, when it fucking mattered.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren.
And I'm Maureen.
Right, so guys, I know you can see the environment. Please don't mind us. We're in the countryside currently, yeah?
Right, but today what brings us here is we're going to be doing an episode on Palestinian American influencers who've been coming on social media and talking a lot about Black Americans, right? But today's episode, you're going to be focusing on one Palestinian lady who went to Palestine with a couple of Black Americans. Now, she later on came to the internet and started complaining that the Black American community likes to play Oppression Olympics with Palestine.
Yeah, but guys, one thing I have to say is that there's always two sides of a coin, right? And that being said, I feel like instead of wanting to put your own side out so much, why don't you instead put yourself in their own shoes in order for you to view what they're trying to say from their own point of view, you know?
Right, because as of the moment, since whatever happened to her community started, Black people have always been vocal about what is happening to their community, and they've always stressed the fact that it is wrong what is happening to their community.
Yeah, and that was until the elections when Palestinian Americans
Made it clear
really,
that they were not on the same page with Black Americans.
right. So which is it? You have to pick a side and stick to it. You can't be coming out to the Black community today calling them
Because
to be
it
allies.
suits you.
Exactly, and the next day, because you're okay, you kick them to the curb and you separate yourselves.
But guys, what are we talking about? Let's watch what we've prepared for you, and then we come back and talk about it. You can also consider subscribing if you're new to our channel, and we'll see you after this video. Let's watch.
This video unfortunately landed on my FYP, and I had to put my phone down several times while watching it because of how inhumane everything that she was saying was. I have a lot of thoughts. I'm going to come back tomorrow when I'm more calm. But in the meantime, I want y'all to ask yourselves what you want Black people to do when we're faced with racism. Since you're the expert on anti-Blackness, tell us exactly what you want us to do when faced with racism. And I understand the nuances of going to a place that's occupied and experiencing racism. That is an extremely complicated place to be in. But the idea that Black people in a situation who are more privileged in that moment than people who are under occupation should just let the racism roll off their backs like water is a wild, inhumane thing to say. Considering that the Black people on your trip were having conversations amongst themselves, how were you involving yourself in those conversations about how they were dealing with the racism that they were facing that was not being directed towards you? Furthermore, another aspect of racism that people don't understand is the physical component. So when I was in Morocco, when I studied abroad there years ago, I got called the N-word every single day when I was walking to school. And I will say it actually didn't really bother me that much because in the moment I knew that I had the privilege in the situation. I was like, at the end of this, I'm going to go back to the US, to my private university, whatever. So long as you don't physically attack me, whatever. But guess what? Somebody on our trip did get physically attacked. Despite having privilege over her attackers, she still got attacked because of their racism. Racism has multiple avenues of being harmful to people. Your unwillingness to understand this is so beyond. I don't even take this video. I don't know why it's still up. This video is causing so much damage to the Black and Palestinian solidarity we're trying to build and continue that has existed for so long, despite Black people being faced with anti-Blackness from the people that we are being allied with. I'm not sure what is wrong with some of you, genuinely.
I don't know what I was expecting from my trip to Palestine, but I certainly did not expect to walk away with racial tensions between myself and the Black people in our group. And that's really disappointing for me to admit, because I was so excited to go on this trip with Black Americans, because I was always under the impression that Black people will be our greatest allies because they understand more than anybody what it's like to live under occupation, what it's like to be oppressed and racially profiled. But during the trip, it felt like some people were too busy playing oppression Olympics to fully grasp the experiences of Palestinians living in Palestine. Some people came on the trip with a very limited understanding of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause, which is problematic in and of itself. But the most problematic thing was the fact that some people were applying a Western lens of racial dynamics to a place where it does not apply. I am not going to sit here and deny that anti-Blackness exists in every single part of the world. But the issue of race is much different in Palestine than in most other places in the world. In Palestine, Palestinians of all colors are undoubtedly the most oppressed people. In Palestine, a non-Palestinian Black person is more privileged than a Palestinian of any color. And an American, Black or white, is one of the most privileged people in Palestine, right beneath Israelis. Some people in the group were too busy victimizing themselves and taking out their anger on all the wrong people to sit with the reality that in modern day, there are some people that are more oppressed than them. One person in particular was incredibly problematic, especially considering she was one of the group leads who was hosting private conversations exclusively for the 7 Black people in the group, which under almost any other circumstances I would encourage. I encourage Black people to create safe spaces for themselves to discuss racial issues among themselves. But the issue is that the only comments I heard come out of this person's mouth about Palestine and Palestinians were negative, were about how racist we are, were about how slavery persisted until the 20th century in Palestine, which is such an uneducated take, by the way. It was not exclusive to Black people, and it was not done mostly by Palestinians. So I believe these conversations being hosted by a person who came to Palestine with biases against Palestinians were so dangerous to Palestinians and ultimately to Black Palestinian solidarity. The most ironic part about all of this is the fact that we sat and had dinner with Afro-Palestinians in Palestine. We sat and broke bread with the family who runs the Afro-Pali Center in Jerusalem. And they are Black. They are visibly Black. And yet they are highly respected in the Palestinian community for the work that they do for Palestinians. I even talked to the chef at our hotel in the last couple of days who was a political prisoner. He had just gotten out of prison 2 months before we arrived in Palestine. And he told us that he sat side by side with an Afro-Palestinian, son of the couple who runs the Afro-Pali Center. He sat with him in prison, and he was shocked when I asked him about racism in Palestine, because he was like, those are my brothers. I don't care what color they are. During this trip, I sat with Palestinians and I told them, talk to me bluntly. I'm a Palestinian. I'm not going to judge our community. Talk to me about racism in Palestine. And every single one of them was like, what is there to say? Like, racism exists in every community, yes. But in Palestine, it's actually few and far between, because the issue of race is so much more complicated in a place like Palestine. And I have been involved in Black activism for many years. And I know that when I am in Black spaces, it is not my place to call out issues within the Black community, especially when those people are being slaughtered. When I am in Black spaces, I am there to observe, to learn, to be an ally, not to call out Black people. By the way, these same people who sat there and talked all this shit about how racist Palestinians are did not hesitate to pose in front of a ginormous George Floyd mural painted by a Palestinian artist. They posed with that artist in front of the mural. And I bet they wouldn't dare look that artist in the face and say that he's racist. By the way, go support that artist. He's Banksy.2 on Instagram. He's an incredible person, incredible artist who I'm still in communication with. He is struggling right now. His daughter is in the hospital, so please reach out and try to help in any way that you can. But I refused to pose in that picture with the rest of the group because literally an hour before that, they were making fun of Palestinians. We passed a mural that was supposed to be, I believe, of Nelson Mandela, but it wasn't the greatest art. And so it kind of looked like George Floyd, and they couldn't tell who it was. And they literally said, "I'm so sick of these people." And yet they won't hesitate to pose in front of a George Floyd mural for a social media photo op. Even when we were about to walk into a masjid, there were beggars outside the masjid who asked some people for money. And she made a comment about how, oh, notice how they're not asking the Black people for money because they think all Black people are poor. And I said, you don't know that. Those same people didn't ask me, a Palestinian American, for money. They're not assuming I'm poor. In fact, when they know you're American, you're immediately up here to them. They immediately assume you have money and that you're privileged in ways that they'll never experience. The reason that they didn't ask some people for money had nothing to do with the fact that those people are Black. They simply just approached a few people out of the entire group asking for money. I could ramble about this for hours because it was one of the most frustrating things of my life to watch people come from America to a place like Palestine and act like they're more oppressed than people literally living under occupation. And it's so ironic because the entire time I'm trying to find parallels between the lives of Palestinians, between the racial profiling that I experienced as a Palestinian and the experiences of Black people in America. I thought that this would be an opportunity for us to come together and understand each other better, not to create more division. But this is why some people are so dangerous to the movement, not only to the pro-Palestinian movement, but also to Black activism. Because if I was somebody else, if I haven't already done so much work for the Black community, if I didn't already have a deep understanding of racial dynamics, this entire experience might have pushed me away from the Black community. But I know that these rotten tomatoes in the community do not represent the Black community as a whole. One of the most ironic parts about all of this is that before making this video, I was sitting in a cafe in Amman, journaling my thoughts about this topic, and I got interrupted by a waiter at the restaurant who asked me where I'm from, and we started chatting, and it turns out he is Jamaican and Palestinian. But ultimately, I think if you have internal biases against Palestinians, you should not be going to Palestine. And if you don't want to acknowledge the experiences of Palestinians in their entirety, then to be honest, we don't need you as an ally. Seeing what Palestinians are going through only makes you think, yeah, no, we have it worse. When you're an American, you are not a true ally. And I will be talking more about the issue of people taking trips to Palestine with a limited understanding of Palestinians and Palestinian history. Because there were so many other issues with some of the people who went on this trip for all the wrong reasons. I don't know what
So there's a girl that made a horrible take concerning Black people that were experiencing anti-Blackness when they went to help Palestinians in Gaza. And she said she expected for these Black people to be allies to the Palestinians, and they were not allies, I guess, when they went to help, guess that didn't matter to her. No, those Black people that went to help the Palestinians, that basically got on planes and flew over to help the Palestinians, they're not allies. They didn't show their allyship then. She basically said that they proved that they weren't allies because they started complaining about the anti-blackness that they were experiencing at the hands of the Palestinians, again, that they went to help, and said that those black people were engaging in oppression Olympics. Now, it's a stupid take. It really is a not well thought out take. It really is a not well thought out take, but it exposes a couple of things about her. One, she doesn't actually value the opinions of black people, because when these black people started pointing out the anti-blackness that they were experiencing, she again said that they were engaging in oppression Olympics and they should ignore the anti-blackness that they were experiencing from Palestinians because it's different in Palestine. And how dare you, darky, point out the anti-blackness that you're experiencing at the hands of the Palestinians when they are experiencing so much strife right now. That's the point, ma'am. That's what they were pointing out. How do they still have time for anti-blackness when they are literally experiencing an ongoing ethnic cleansing campaign? That's the point that those black people were pointing out to you, that even in all of the stuff that your people are going through, they still have time for anti-blackness. And you try to make the argument that it resonates different in Palestine. It doesn't. Simply because there are black Palestinians doesn't mean that anti-blackness isn't the same. It's on the same accord all across all non-black communities. Every single black person knows that when they go into non-black communities, it is most likely that we will experience some form of anti-blackness. It is the same. It resonates on the same accord across all non-black communities. The disrespect that those black people were experiencing from Palestinians when they were going to help you, they were going to help Palestinians. It's the same disrespect that black people experienced at the hands of Ukrainians that they were going to help. It resonates the same. There is no difference. It has the same root, white supremacy. And it's not lost on me that you saw these black people fly over there to help, do everything in their power to ensure that they were on the front lines to help Palestinians. And that wasn't good enough for you to see them as allies, to respect what they were saying to you, to understand that in all of the stuff that's happening, why do you still have time for anti-blackness? Which just shows us that you also are anti-black and you don't respect the opinions, the words, or the lived experiences of black people. And you only weaponize our struggle to benefit yourselves. I'm going to tell all non-black communities this. Be so fucking for real with this shit. Be so fucking for real. If you want black people to care about you, then this is a basic requirement. A basic requirement. It is non-negotiable. If you want black people to care about you, your people, your causes, then you must respect us. And when you disrespect us, we are always going to point it out. Period. End of discussion. The fucking nerve.
So guys, welcome back. Let us know what you think about the video we just played you. Yeah, you know what I was talking about, there always being two sides of a coin, is because while the Palestinian lady was trying to compare the things that Palestinians went through versus what black Americans have gone through, you cannot make such a comparison, because whatever black Americans are going through right now,
each group has gone through traumatic experiences in different ways.
Yeah,
but
and you
traumatic
can
nonetheless.
Exactly, you cannot expect black Americans to forget what they've been through, because it's people right now. You call yourself Palestinians, others call, but it's the same people who look like you, who put their own kind through a lot. There's a lot of history there, you know. And another thing, okay, what I can say is it's only the name that is dividing white people. You know, white people in South Africa will be called a different thing. White people in wherever will be called a different thing. White people in America will be called a different thing. But at the end of the day, the ancestors of all those people who are palm colored are the same ancestors who oppressed black people everywhere, you know. So you cannot expect black Americans to just move forward like nothing ever happened. And I have a feeling for the black Americans to go all the way to Palestine with this group so that they can go help over there, I feel like they had good intentions. What you have to ask yourself instead is, why did they after traveling that whole distance start complaining and separating themselves? Something something had to have happened, or they had to have gone through an experience which this Palestinian woman could not notice because she had the privilege of, you know,
her being white,
and she
or
had the
proximity to
whiteness, and she had the privilege to look different, you know. And because black people everywhere have always been castigated, the things that the black community were going through, the people who traveled with them, the 7 people, there's something that they went through that only them could recognize that it wasn't
call
right.
it out. Because one thing I've noticed with a majority number of black Americans is, if they spot wrong then and there, they will call it out. Most of them don't hold it in, right?
True.
And what the Palestinian American influencer tried to do, I feel like, for my own personal opinion, is she was saying the oppression her people were facing is much greater than the racism black Americans face on a regular basis, right? And hence she felt like black Americans had no right to compare what they were going through or to complain about what they're going through, because it's not as bad as what her people are going through. You cannot compare.
You know, one thing I can say to that Palestinian influencer is go take a book and read some history, because if she knew the history of the black community properly, she wouldn't even be sitting down and sounding stupid, you know, because you're trying to argue a point and trying to compare 2 communities that have been affected differently. The comparison does not match. If someone says they're trying to explain that they're feeling a certain type of way, instead you should listen to why they are talking the way they are talking, because going there they had intentions to help. What changed? That is something that she should have, those are the kind of questions she should have been asking, instead of sitting in her own feelings and getting into her own feelings, you know. Something had to have happened. And I feel like this happens a lot with a lot of communities, the communities that are not black. Understanding black Americans for them normally is hard, because
they don't go through what black Americans go through every day.
Exactly. And this is
so
why
they feel like it's not necessarily a pain that should be talked about, because to their eyes it's no pain.
Yeah, and that is why we normally say, until you walk a mile in someone else's shoe, you will never understand what they go through. Because a black American can come today and say that systemically they're being oppressed, education wise they're not getting the quality like the other counterparts. When they go to hospitals, they can talk about them not getting the same services. There's even a white nurse I came across on TikTok, she was literally crying, you know, and saying how when she was still a student practicing, she was still learning to become a nurse. She went to give birth to a hospital, and in that hospital there was also another lady, but she was black, who had gone to deliver. And there's something she noticed, which she says right now, knowing what she knows, being the doctor she is after that much training, she knows, she was saying that whatever they did to that woman was wrong, and it was not only wrong but also illegal. So there was a procedure that black lady was made to undergo that she shouldn't have gone through it, because she had given birth perfectly, but they still went ahead. You know, like someone who has complications, there was something that needed to be done, but to a person who had complicated birth. Yeah, but that lady was okay. They just did that out of the racism they normally have in their system, not only systems, but the white people who are rendering services. So this lady, she couldn't even keep a straight eye while telling this story. She was literally crying, and she says right now, if that woman knew, or her herself, because as a practicing doctor, she said she noticed, she felt things were not okay, because there are some things she could understand, but she didn't know so much because she hadn't practiced. But after she was done with her training, she came to know that was whatever they did to that black woman was illegal, you know. And so she said because of that experience she went through with the doctors in that hospital, how she was treated, and the other lady, right now she aims to be a perfect doctor, especially to the black community. And she was talking about how she normally pays special attention to black women who go to her hospital, because she knows the hospital already is against them. Not only the hospital or the system, but also the doctors who are treating them, they're already against them because of racism, you know.
Right. And you know one thing, guys, that other groups of people who are not black black will never understand, and I hope most of them will understand this one day, because some of them have already started coming to this realization, is that whenever you find yourself in trouble as a non-black person, the same kind of compassion you expect the black community to have on you because you're going
It
through,
has to be reciprocal.
right? You don't try to demean or to underrate someone else's struggles or someone else's pain just because you feel like, of course, you know, whatever is happening to her people is not good. And the black community have been trying to say this, and they've spoken up against what is happening there, you know.
They even cancelled companies because of Palestinians.
Yes, they even cancelled companies because of her own people, you know. And right now, for her to come and generalize a whole group of people and undermine the small group she was with and say that they're practicing Operation Olympics, and that whatever happens to them was small, it wasn't right of her to do that. And I hope by now, because the internet really called her out for this, I hope by now she has truly learned her lesson.
Do they ever
Anyway? Let's just hope wherever she is, she's seen the light of what she did, you know. Because if she noticed something with the group, there was a better way to say it, but the way she said it is exactly who she is and how she feels about the black community and how she meant it. So yeah, guys, let us know what you think about this in the comment section. You can also consider subscribing if you're new to our channel, and we'll see you on our next episode.